In Jesus' name, amen. Now, before I read this, I'll just give you what happened ahead of time. As you know the story, Elijah calls for all the prophets of Baal to meet him on the mountain, and they're going to sacrifice to God. And the sacrifice is going to be, you call down fire from heaven. And so all the prophets of Baal try this the best they can, and they fail. And Elijah calls for fire down from heaven, and it burns up the sacrifices and the water and the rocks and everything. And then they kill the prophets of Baal. And Elijah is hoping for people to say, that's it, we're going to change. We're turning 180 degrees, no more, but it didn't happen. And he got back to Samaria, and Jezebel says, I'm going to kill you. And so he runs away. And verse 9 is where he's arrived. It said, then he came there to a cave and lodged there. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him and said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? And he said, I've been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the sons of Israel have forsaken your covenant, tore down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And I alone am left, and they seek my life to take it away. So he said, go forth and stand on the mountain before the Lord. Behold, the Lord was passing by, and a great strong wind was rending the mountain and breaking into pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake was a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of a gentle blowing. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, a voice came to him and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? And he said, I've been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the sons of Israel have forsaken your covenant, tore down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword, and I alone am left, and they seek my life to take it away. The Lord said to him, go, return your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you have arrived, you shall anoint Hazael king of Aram. And Jehu the son of Nimshi you shall anoint king over Israel. And Elisha the son of Shaphat of Abel Maholan you shall anoint as a prophet in your place. It shall come about, the one who escapes from the sword of Hazael, Jehu will put to death, and the one who escapes from the sword of Jehu, Elisha will put to death. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees who have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. So he departed from there and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, while he was plowing with 12 pair of oxen before him. And he was the 12th, and Elisha passed over to him and threw his mantle on him. He left the oxen and ran after Elijah, and said, please let me kiss my father and mother, then I will follow you. And he said to him, go back again, what have I done to you? So he returned from following him and took a pair of oxen and sacrificed them and boiled their flesh with the implements of the oxen and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he arose and followed Elijah and ministered to him. The name of the sermon today is called, It's You and Me Against the World. Now, we like to think of, time has put a golden glow around historic figures, especially figures in the Bible. And we like to think about them as the wonderful men that would sit down, and kids would come and sit on their knee, just like the pictures of Jesus. And we like to think about them as being friendly and kind and generous and every good quality. But I don't think that was Elijah or Elisha. I think they were a couple of curmudgeons. Ones that faithfully followed and served God, but they had their own way, their own personality that was just like, But we'll look at that in a minute. Anyway, Reader's Digest in the 50s would give out personal story awards. And if you had something that happened to you, you were, in this particular one, it was a teacher, and she told a story of her own life. And they gave her a $2,500 prize, which was a lot of money at that time. You could buy a new Ford or a Chev for $2,500 in 1956. So it was a lot of money. And so her story was about Larry. He was a little 6-year-old boy, and he was a beautiful little boy, but he had spastic paralysis. And that would be in the 40s, and people didn't know what that was. What is that? And his mother wanted him to go to school, and she showed up at the school, and she asked the principal, and he says, "No, I'm not making that decision. You'll have to ask the teacher." So basically, he was saying, "No, go away." But she went and asked the teacher, and she was 24. And if you do the math, that means she was 18 when her son was born, and maybe 17 when she got married. And she loved this little boy, and she came to the teacher, and she explained how he loved little children, and how he didn't get to play with them, and she wanted so badly for him to go to school. And she would do everything she could. She had a little cart she pulled him in because he couldn't walk, and he could hardly speak. And the woman, the teacher, her heart broke for this little boy, and she got mad, and she said, "Yes, he can come." And then she got home that night, and she said, "I have 60 children in my class, and now I've got 61, and he's severely handicapped. What have I done to myself?" Well, the mother shows up. She's so happy. She shows up the next day, and she brings the little boy in her cart, in his little cart that she has for him, and she puts him in the chair, and she gives him his new crayons and his new book and his new everything because she's so happy. And the other children come in after, and they said, "Okay, we're going to color." They're all first graders. "We're going to color." And he starts coloring, and then he hits one of those spaz, and all the crayons go everywhere, and everyone laughs. And she explains to him that this little boy, Larry, has this disease, and it's not something he did on purpose, and it's not something to laugh at, and everyone quiets down. And then she says, "I have no idea why I did it." She said, "You need to go pick up your crayons now." Remember, he's severely headed. And so he flops down on his stomach, and he slides around the floor, and he does his best to pick up the crayons, and sometimes he goes like this again, and he shoots them across the floor. And the class gather around, because not only is it amazing to watch somebody who takes on a task in spite of everyone's eyes watching him, and he's not embarrassed, and he does the thing, and 5 minutes later he has all his crayons, and he crawls back up in his desk. And the kids, instead of laughing at him, are amazed at his strength and courage. And everybody wants to be his friend, and so they take turns. It's an honor to take him out to the playground on his little cart, and they include him in all the games. And when there's a game that he can't play in, well, some of the other child sits off on the sidelines and watches them play Red Rover because he couldn't do that. And sometimes when it was his turn to go up and read, and he got one word out at a time, and his sweat was pouring down his face, and everyone knew that this was exceptionally hard. Well, the teacher who had 60 children, they finally got a replacement. Now she was going to have 30, but she couldn't let go of Larry because he was so valuable, because he taught all these other children patience and kindness and sharing and how not to be too proud when someone else will give you a hand. And he also taught them love and the power of the human spirit to overcome adversity. Well, she finishes her story by saying that he's now in high school, and he's learned to walk in crutches, and he speaks as well as anyone, and he's a bright, determined determined, cheerful young man. And then her final words was, but he always was. You see, that man, that boy, everyone loved because he just tried. You didn't have to make, the story was, the title of the story was, he didn't have to have everything made easy for him. Well, this wasn't Elijah or Elisha. They weren't loved. The people didn't care for them because, as you know, we just read, whoever Jehu didn't put to death, Elisha would put to death. You don't make friends when you kill people. Well, God loved him. God cared for them, and that's the story we're going to look at. How he went to Mount Horeb. So the first thing we want to look at is, number one is, what about me? The fallout from fear. Now you're thinking to yourself, what about me? Is Elijah, but that's not the way it is. If you turn to verse 3 of 19, it says, and he was afraid and alone, and ran for his life, and came to Beersheba, which belonged to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey in the wilderness, and came and sat down under a juniper tree, and requested for himself that he might die, and said, it is enough. Now, O Lord, take my life, for I'm no better than my father's. Now, his servant, he's the guy. What about me? He just left. He didn't take any food with him. He didn't take any possession. He's gone in the desert. Is he coming back? Who's going to pay my paycheck at the end of the day? Well, you see, off he went. He didn't plan to come back. He planned to die. Now, this question is, why did he panic? And there is no easy answer. I haven't got an easy answer for you. Why did he panic? Because he was powerful. He could call down fire from heaven. Why is he scared of Jezebel? Why is he upset? Well, I have no idea. I'll tell you my panic story. I don't have good teeth. I don't have strong teeth. I go to the dentist and he says, you need to get filling. When I was a child, I had 12 fillings. But anyway, I was never afraid of the dentist. But the last couple years, I've been at the dentist, and I have my head back, and you slope in that chair, and I start to panic. And I couldn't figure it out. And I had my head like this, and I turned it that much. Just a tiny bit, hardly perceptible, and I'm completely calm. I have no idea why that is. If I hold my head like this, I panic. If I turn my head like this, I'm fine. What's all that? How's that working with your spine and your neck and all of that? In the same way, I have no idea why he panicked. Why he was that strong man and all of a sudden he wasn't. But the panic affected it more than just him. It affected that servant because he was out of a job. And if you go on reading, he went a day into the wilderness, and now a day is 20 miles. You can walk, people walked an average of 20 miles a day. And so we assume he walked 20 miles into the desert and he sat down by a juniper tree. And he went to sleep. And you know the story, an angel came and woke him up, and there was a fire burning with food cooking and water there. And he ate and he went back to sleep. And then in verse 7 it says, the angels of the Lord came a second time and touched him and said, arise, eat, because the journey is too great for you. Well, the name of this is, what are you doing here? You see, if you read this, it seems to be that the angel said the journey is too great for you. Now, Elijah went off into the desert to die. He doesn't have a plan. He didn't bring food. He didn't bring water. He's gone to die. So where's the journey he's going? You have to assume that God was telling him where to go. So he rose and ate and drank, and went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mountain of God. So, I looked this up, because it sounds like a miracle. He walked for 40 days and 40 nights on the strength of that food. And if you look in the back of your Bible, where they've got little maps, which I did, Beersheba is here, and Mount Horeb is here, and it's 200 miles. And so you have to assume that he went 20 miles into the wilderness. That's 180 miles. Well, 180 miles divided by 40 is 4.5 miles a day. A 2-hour walk at a normal pace is 4.5 miles. So the people were saying, this isn't a miracle, but remember, this man is clinically depressed, if you want to call it that, and he's not eating for 40 days, so 4.5 miles a day is enough. Well, the second point is, what are you doing here? If you remember, we read that in verse 19. He says, verse 9. And he came there to a cave and lodged there, and behold, the word of the Lord came to him and said to him, what are you doing here? Well, that would seem like God was trying out sarcasm. Like he sent him there. What am I doing here? Well, you sent me here. But I think Elijah understood, what are you doing here? Because he goes on to say that I'm very zealous for the Lord of hosts. No one else worships you. And they've killed all the other prophets, and they're trying to kill me. He's saying, I'm out of a job, God. You have a job for me to be a prophet to these people. They don't want a prophet. They've killed all the prophets. There's only me left, and they're trying to kill me. The reason I'm here is because I'm unemployed. I got no job. Well, if you look at that, you think a prophet needs people to prophesy to. Well, God said that's not so. If you continue reading, we just did, he said, look, I have a job for you to do. You have to anoint this and this and this person and get another person to replace you. And besides, I have 7,000 people who have never bowed the knee. It's not everyone. I have 7,000 people. Well, the third point is, pick up the new guy on your way through. In verse 19, it says, so he departed from there. Remember, he hasn't eaten. Departed from there and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, while he was plowing with 12 pair of oxen before him. And he was with the 12th. And Elijah passed over to him and threw his mantle on him. Now, remember I said that Elijah was kind of prickly? You'd think that you'd want to say, he'd come up and he's being very cheerful and say, hello, I'm Elijah. And I know you've heard of me. I'm the one that did these things. And I was with God. And he said, you're going to be my replacement. And we're going to have great times together serving God. Let's have a group hug. But that's not what he did. He threw his cloak on him and kept on going. There you go. Job's done. It's almost as if he said, I'm doing this, but sorry, I'm not happy about it. Some people think that they're irreplaceable. They've done such a wonderful job that who could replace them? Seriously, who could replace Elijah? Well, God said Elisha would. But Elijah's still not got that comfortably in his mind. Now, it's almost as if that he he's testing Elisha. He's saying, God, you said this is the right guy. I don't believe it. I don't think so. I'm going to throw my mantle on him, and if he can figure out this and follow me and do this, okay. But I'm not going to explain to him all of the ins and outs of being a prophet. I'm not going to make him, I'm just going to, and then I'm going to keep on going. And if you read it in verse 20, it says, he left the oxen and ran after Elijah. Now, if you've ever been on a tractor plowing, you got to stop the tractor. You got to put it in neutral. You got to put on that foot brake that holds it, and then you get off the tractor. Well, the same with oxen. You can't just let go of them. And so he had to stop. And already, Elijah is far enough down the road that he has to run after him to catch him. It's almost as if he's testing Elijah. Elisha, this is your test. If you can figure this out. And so Elisha comes and says, let me kiss my father and mother, and I'll follow you. Well, the fourth point is a proper goodbye, and I leave forever. Now, he says, please let me kiss my father and mother, and I will go with you. And Elijah says, go back again. What have I done to you? Perfect. You're going to leave. I'm going to keep on going. I don't have to do this. But I think what happened was, he said to Elijah, look, you have to stay. We'll have a meal. I won't go kiss my father and mother. We'll have a meal. Stay. Please stay. And so what he does, if you read 21, he returns and took the pair of oxen. Now, bear in mind that a pair of oxen is a valuable commodity for a farmer. And a plow. That's a lot of merchandise. That's a great big investment. And so he kills both oxen because he says, I'm never going to be a farmer again. I'm done. It's done. The whole thing is done. And he burned the plow, and he cooked them, and he fed everybody. And my hope, which it doesn't say this, is my hope is that somebody was good enough to run home and get mom and dad and bring them back so that they could be there, because he can't. He's cooking the meal. He's breaking up the plow. He's setting them on fire. You see, this is one meal with the people I know, and then I'm done. I'm off. It's the end of this part of my life. And he chose wisely. And it doesn't say that he had any regrets about what he left behind. But there was he didn't mention a wife and a family. That's all he had. He had his plow, he had his mom and dad. Now, it's you and me against the world. It's a song. Do you remember that? It's a Helen Reddy song. I'm not going to sing it for you. She does a wonderful job of singing this. It's so beautiful. And I mentioned this song, and I had it on my phone, and I played it for somebody at the exercise. And she's 26, had no idea, never heard of It's You and Me Against the World. Anyway, as the song starts, there's a little voice. It's Larry's voice, probably. And it says, tell me again, Mommy. And she starts. You and me against the world. Sometimes it feels like you and me against the world. When all the others turn their back and walk away, you can count on me to stay. Remember when the circus came to town and you were frightened by the clown? Wasn't it nice to be around someone that you knew? Someone who was big and strong and looking out for you and me against the world. Sometimes it feels like you and me against the world. And for all the times we cried, I always felt that God was on our side. And when one of us is gone, and one of us is left to carry on, then remembering will have to do. Our memories alone will get us through. Think about the days of me and you and me against the world. And when one of us is gone, and one of us is left to carry on, then remember remembering will have to do. Our memories alone will get us through. Think about the days of me and you and me against the world. And in the end of the song it says, I love you, Mommy. I love you too, baby. You can see this as the little boy Larry and his mother. You could see that as if that was their story, because she loved him so much that she would do anything to get him so that he could be in school. But that wasn't the story of Elijah or Elisha. We think about all their miracles and all the things that they were a part of, but there's nowhere it says that they were the loved people, that people loved them, that people gathered around them. They may have been in awe of them and scared of them, but no one says, and you see the only one left, the me or the you, was God. And that's what God did. He went to the mountain and said, it's me and you against the world. Now, I like these two guys. I like the fact that their story, if you notice, they're the two prophets that don't write anything down. They didn't write it. There's no book of Elijah, no book of Elisha, not like Isaiah or Jeremiah. They didn't write anything down. They just did amazing things for God, and that was it. You know what? I wouldn't want to be either one of them. I wouldn't want to have their life. I may want to do the miracles, but I wouldn't want to be hated by everyone. What do we want in life? Well, in life we want to be respected and to be honored and to have friends and to have family that surrounds you and to enjoy the wife or the husband of your youth and to watch your grandchildren or your cousins and all these children around in your life, and you want to be complimented on the things that you do well. And to have people seek your advice because they know you've done these things well. Now, if I haven't thanked you properly for the gift that you gave Juan and I for Christmas, I'm thanking you because you honored us. That was a wonderful thing. And I got a card from Jeff from Hillsborough Baptist Church. And he said all sorts of wonderful things. I wanted to meet the guy he was talking about. He said such wonderful things. And those, I have something here. I have a little box, and I put these in. These are thank you notes. Thank you very much for taking us to the prom in your lovely Monarch. Thank you. Thanks to you, we arrived in style and even got into the newspaper. You helped us out at such short notice. Was an extreme blessing. We only hope that someday we can return the favor. Jenna Cadet. This one says, this is a little boy's one. It says, thank you for teaching us how to make cool crafts. You're a fabulous teacher. I hope you enjoy having me too. David. This one says, I just wanted to thank you for your willingness to work with our nursery children today. Having people who we can call when there's a last-minute cancellation means a lot. This one here says, wow, I was just blown away by your fabulous set you built for the drama. You're so talented in that way. Thank you very much for giving your time and energy in this project. I know that you've been busy and you gave 110%. And this one is anonymous. It says, What you do at Hillside is an example of a genuine servant's heart. Thank you for giving your time and God's gifts to the children of Hillside. We are truly blessed to have your spirit of giving for all these years. Anonymous. Anyway, the point is, those are wonderful. The reason I didn't throw them out is because they reminded me that people appreciated me. And I have another little box. It's an imaginary box, and it's in my head. And when I have memories of my children or my grandchildren that do wonderful things, and I got that memory, and I can put it in the box, and I can take it out of the box and enjoy it any time. And I was thinking of that, and Jeremiah, but he was a prophet of God, and God says, you're not going to have a family, and no one's going to love you, and you can't have a wife. And it was the same with these two, Elijah and Elisha. They had no wife, they had no family, no one loved them. If you remember in the story we just read, Elijah left his servant and never went back for him. If you sneak ahead and stop listening to me and you read the next 5 or 6 chapters about Elijah, there's never said that he went back and got his servant. He was left. And Elisha, well, he had a servant too. And if you remember, Naaman, the guy came and, Naaman, anyway, he healed him of leprosy. And he said, no, I will not take anything from you. And the servant went off running after him and said, well, somebody, he told a lie, and he got some stuff, a couple pieces of silver and a couple robes. And he got back, and Elisha said, I know where you went, and also you're going to get the leprosy that we were, and he was white as snow. Now, can you imagine? Now, he couldn't be a servant anymore because he had leprosy. He had to stay away from people. And you're putting an ad in the paper, looking for a servant. Elisha the prophet. No one likes me. I'm really a prickly guy. I'm not very easy to get along with. I have no family. You will be it. And by the way, the last servant I had disobeyed, and I called down leprosy from heaven on him. So make sure you obey. Please apply in writing to this P.O. box. Well, how would you get, who would want to be with you? If you failed, you got leprosy. Well, I read in the about Elijah, because I wanted to know about his early life. And there was a Jewish site, and they talked about Elijah, and they said he was the most beloved prophet in the Bible, not the Bible, the Torah. And I said to myself, well, that's what history will do for you. He wouldn't have been a beloved prophet when he was alive. He would have been a feared prophet. And both of them would have been. And it wouldn't have been a very good life. And sometimes God calls us to be that. And sometimes God calls somebody else to be that. And if you looked at these two wonderful men, and you think about it, and we need something, right? We need salvation. We need to be forgiven of our sins. But these two men aren't able to do that. They're not up for the job. They can't do that. We can look at their life and say, I can see lots of things where they got it wrong. They weren't very nice and not very friendly. And then, so who's going to do that for us? They were the best in the Old Testament as far as powerful. Well, God had to send his son Jesus. And if you read the story of Jesus, you know that he was, Isaiah said he would rejected of man. All sorts of things, and that's what he was hated. He sometimes he couldn't go to Jerusalem because they were trying to kill him. All of these things he suffered too. But he loved everybody. If you read the stories of Jesus, love just poured out of him. Well, you see, these men were just pictures. They're pictures of Jesus. And we know that Jesus sent his son to do all these hard things, and then he died on the cross to save us from our sins. That's why we're having communion. We're recognizing that Jesus' life was hard. He did all those things, and then his body was broken, and his blood was shed for us. Because God demanded justice. You see, we have worked hard to accumulate a lot of sins in our life. And we need someone because if we are responsible for our justice, then we are condemned. There's nothing we can do. And Jesus' Father, God the Father, demanded justice. And when Jesus died on the cross, he said, "It is done. I have paid that price." And God, when we accept Jesus, when God looks at us, it's as if Jesus is standing in front of us and he sees us through Jesus. And his blood has washed our sins away, and we've been made whole. Let's pray. Lord Jesus,